Welcome, everybody, to our high school football schedule release show on the Daily Dodge TV YouTube channel and on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam. I'm Cory Sparks, joined by the better half of the Dam Sports Show, weekdays from 4 to 5 on 1430 and Daily Dodge TV. That's Wally Lukachinsky, and our 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam sports director and the voice of Beaver Dam Golden Beavers football, Wade Bates. And before we jump into the 2025 football schedule release show part of this whole thing, the entire schedule, 9 weeks of the regular season, Wade, you just put out a report. You fired out some emails to all of us, and it was humbling seeing the number 156 for the amount of games we covered in the 2024-25 season.
You know, can you believe that the high school football teams are out practicing today, and we're talking about 2025, 2026, but the 2024-25 season just wrapped up on Tuesday, the last possible day it could have been for American Legion baseball. So we actually put the bow on last year's sports season just 2 days ago. You mentioned 156 games we broadcast on Daily Dodge TV and 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam. Now, we were shooting for about 100, but we ended up with 156, and there's a lot of different reasons that go into that. You know, number one, we try to find great matchups that are out there, a success of teams in the postseason that we can do, and we've had a lot of teams that made runs deep into the postseason. You know, obviously some Beaver Dam teams made runs in the postseason, but you had Watertown go to state in softball. You know, don't forget about the Slam at the Dam, Columbus with a little bit of run in football as well. And you know, we want to bring those matchups to you, and here you go. And we had 91 different teams that appeared on Daily Dodge TV or 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam over the last year. 91.
That feels crazy. I didn't even realize that we'd have that many possible matchups in the area. That's
all the
crazy.
Non-conference probably helps. And then, like you said, Slam at the Dam, you're bringing in different teams from kind of around the area, but also not.
Yeah, from all over. I mean, you go up to like New Richmond. You know, we saw Seymour this past weekend. We saw Bondwell. You know, when it comes to the Legion. So, you know, Brookfield Central and those non-conference games. So, just being able to expose our product to people across the state. You know, and a few athletic directors outside the area that you talk to. You know, once they see you do the games and you email them and like what we're doing. Oh yeah, we know what Daily Dodge is all about. Yeah, come on down. You know, which is kind of cool as we talk about our football schedule release, because I had to make some contacts with athletic directors, and we are going on the road for a couple games that are maybe outside of where we might traditionally go, and just proud of the brand. You know, you two guys, Mike Tronson, you know, Tim Haldeman, you know, Tim Ladrin, Aiden Voigt, who is, you know, the master of the camera, along with Ninja, Jack Wilski, and you know, how many, Ryan Gerber, I can't forget about him as well, you know, doing wrestling for us. And we got to be forgetting somebody, but anyone
who's ever helped, thank you. We don't want to miss
Yes,
him,
thank you. So 156 games were broadcast last. Think about it. How many days are in a year, Wally?
365.
Yes, it's a game every other day.
Basically, that's it. And sometimes more, you know, sometimes less. But it's been a passion to promote the youth in making an impact on kids in high school athletics, Legion baseball in the area, and you know, treat them like stars, treat them like, you know, or ESPN in Bristol, Connecticut, and promote it as much as we can.
Yeah, basically the same thing here in Beaver Dam, right? But I do want to go back and touch on something you said about the competitiveness of the game. So, like, Wade, when you're calling out to different schools, and obviously we're covering all the Beaver Dam games, we're the home of the Golden Beavers, but when you're determining the other matchups, you said some of that's based on past success, what you're anticipating this year. What can you say about that?
Yeah, we kind of go through the schedule, and obviously we know every Beaver Dam game is on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam and Daily Dodge TV this year. You know, that sometimes we've had to do a radio. There are a few schools that like won't let us come do video anymore. So it's going to be a radio only. Worked out good this year that all Beaver Dam games will be on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam and Daily Dodge TV. And then when we go around, you know, Mike and Tim Haldeman, that is, have been doing games across the region since the 90s.
Wow.
You know, so, and we have a couple of things we look for. Number one, we look for good matchups. You know, so I've talked to a lot of coaches in the area. Hey, what do you think, you know, the Trailways Conference this year? What do you think of the Eastern Suburban, the Capital? Because you like to have games that are competitive for the viewing audience on Daily Dodge TV. And so you do that, number one. So what I usually do is you go down and you list all the games, you know, and you think, okay, this game
Throw it out.
Well, no, there are some games because you're like, okay, you know, this team's going to win by, probably is going to be a heavy favorite. So then you look at games that are going to be competitive. We like to get as many area teams featured as we can too as well, you know, because it's always great to be able to bring, you know, go to Marquezan, go to Horicon, go to Eustisford, go to Columbus, you know, go to Lake Mills this year, go to Cambria, Friesland, you know, and so we try to get out to as many games as we can. And some years the schedule works out great. Some years it doesn't. And then it also goes into press box availability, because now there's also more and more people like us that like to promote high school sports. So if you're going to a game and there's like 3 other video streams there, we're almost like, does it do our audience good? We want to give them the ESPN product.
Right.
But also, we'd like to expose ourselves and, not oversaturate one area where we can go. So there's a lot that goes into it, and we try to pick the best matchups, and we think we have a pretty good schedule that's balanced across the region this year, and it's going to be fun. And again, this is the football-only release show.
Correct.
We're working on the soccer for the boys and girls volleyball also competing this fall, and we'll have plenty of Beaver Dam coverage on that, and who knows if we go outside the area. Still working on those as well here, and probably next week we'll secure those dates and times and things like this. But we do know that we'll have 2 games a week every week through the 9-week regular season. First couple of weeks we know won't be doubleheader, kind of night, 2 games in a night. First couple of weeks we get spoiled by having some Thursday night football as well.
Makes life a lot easier. We get to cover both games that way too. And you mentioned 91 teams, and the cool thing about that too is that's 91 different fan bases that have their grandparents that are in Arizona or in Nashville that get to sit down and watch something where a lot of these schools otherwise aren't getting broadcast. So huge thank you to Wade, because I feel like he kind of brushed it and gave all of us credit. He's really the motor that makes all this happen. So huge 100%. Thank you to Wade over here.
And it is cool getting emails. Obviously a lot of fan bases, if you're in town and you can't make it because you have to work or you're a grandparent, but he said when all of a sudden you get an email from Australia or somebody in Europe that is watching Daily Dodge TV and watching Beaver Dam girls basketball from China, which we've got. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's our reach, right? It just keeps growing year by year. And so 156, we'll see if we get to 157. But number 1 for this upcoming 2025-26 season, Wade just alluded to it, is going to be on a Thursday. We'll jump into week 1. It is Johnson Creek, or Crick, I'm not doing that again, at Marshall. That's going to be a Daily Dodge TV exclusive. And then Beaver Dam opens up their season on the road, a conference play actually, at Fort Atkinson, or former conference.
Conference.
So now it's Badger Small for them.
Yes, it is. Thursday, August 21st, that Johnson Creek Marshall game. Johnson Creek. I'm going to say Crick. Are you going to say Creek?
I'm going to say Crick.
I'll jump on with Crick. I've been overruled, so Crick it is.
You guys asked, didn't you, when you went down there?
Yeah, and it was weird because I feel like a lot of the people from the area say Johnson Creek, but then we'd get there and there'd be occasional people too. It's Johnson Creek.
Yeah.
So it feels very 50-50. It's choose your own adventure, Wade.
Okay. Well, Johnson Creek is the defending Trailways champ. They went to level 2 last year. Marshall, obviously, always going to be competitive in the Eastern Suburban Conference. Matt Kleinheinz's squad, going to be tough. Have some people they need to replace, some new faces, but Brady Kleinheinz is back under center.
I think that's the big key is we're going to see a lot of different teams where they're replacing their quarterback this year. They're replacing the player that's touching the ball every single time. Coach Kleinheinz he has the luxury of knowing he gets his guy back this year. That's Brady coming back for another year. They had a little troubles with the offensive line at the beginning of last year, but they really got into a groove going into the postseason, went on a little bit of a run, and then ran into Belleville, an 8 seed. So crazy little story there. For Johnson Crick, the Blue Jays, yet again, they're on the search for a new quarterback. Wally and I didn't know who their quarterback would be until they took the field last year because it was that much of just an open competition. Ended up being their kicker in Tanner Herman, who could drill it from 40+. He did everything for them. He graduated, though, so hard reset for the Blue Jays.
And, again, that's on Thursday, August 21st, and then on Friday, August 22nd, Beaver Dam, you mentioned, goes to Fort Atkinson. Beaver Dam handled the Blackhawks 48-21 last year. The 21-point second quarter was the difference. Josiah Barnes had a big day, 188 yards there. Fort's one of those schools that they seem like a few years back, they had the staff in place, and they're on the verge of maybe, getting to that next level of conference play, and they just haven't been able to put it together, and we'll see what happens. They just had 1 win last year, and that was at Jefferson in week 2.
One of their biggest problems last year, too, they had no one on that team that rushed for over 172 yards over the course of a season. So having that line play in front, being able to average more than 9 points a game this year is going to be huge for Fort Atkinson, and to be a big opportunity for Beaver Dam to go on the road and possibly get a big conference win early in the season.
This is the schedule release show on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam and Daily Dodge TV, taking a look at the high school football broadcast schedule on DDTV and ESPN BD. And, of course, all the games stream at dailydodge.com. If you want the audio, you can find them there or on the YouTube page, Cory.
Absolutely. You can go to all of those different places. And with that, let's jump on over to week 2. Heavyweight matchup here to start. Lake Mills at Marshall. Tyler Wally, one of the most impressive quarterbacks in the state of Wisconsin coming into this year. And then Beaver Dam on the road again at Menominee Falls. So we don't have the home opener quite yet.
Yeah, that's Thursday, August 28th is Lake Mills at Marshall. Not sure if Wally's going to be available for that one as well in that game.
Okay.
A DDTV, and we'll see what happens. Again, Marshall's going to have 2 tests early in the year for Coach Kleinheinz. Now Matt didn't. He's not a fan of you two guys coming out to Marshall to do game. I mean, he's a fan, but also you guys maybe not.
We were a kiss of death last year.
Yeah,
we were
the advanced analytics of we were 0-3, and when we were not there, they were a remarkable football program through and through. But they went through their rough patches. Coincidentally, when we were there.
Yeah, I mean, because they started the year 0-3 last year. We were there for 2 of them, and then they did turn it around. Biggest question for them, you mentioned Brady's going to be leaned on a lot there as a signal caller, but then you have nearly 1,300 rushing yards and 500 receiving yards. You'll lose between that Swiss Army knife, Max Temple, and Bo Meyer. So a lot of questions to answer there, and I'm excited to watch Lake Mills. Can you believe it? St. Cat's went on to win the state title. They were on the ropes with this Lake Mills team very late in that game.
One possession game.
It is. Again, that's Daily Dodge TV exclusive on Thursday, August 28th, and that'll be a Wally and Cory show, right?
Yes.
That'll be fun. And then Friday, August 29th, Beaver Dam, a team that I haven't seen. I saw Menominee Falls maybe 2013, 2014 in the playoffs when I was calling Fond du Lac. But Beaver Dam gets to go to the Falls for a Daily Dodge TV and 1430 ESPN game. Menominee Falls was didn't have a win last year.
They struggled, but don't be deceived. 4 of their losses were by 2 possessions or less, and their last 2 games were 2 of the most competitive contests that we saw out of this team. Nice chance for Beaver Dam, though. They're staying on the road, build those bonds, continue to get their footing before East Central play.
Yeah, because and that's big for Brock Lindy's squad because the senior class, I mean, you guys have talked about it on the Damn Sports Show and here on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam, a special group of kids, a lot of slots to be filled. Last year, I talked to Coach Brock Lindy, and it was like they kind of knew most of the positions who would, at least on the depth chart to start the year, was number 1. This year, you look at the depth chart, and I was out at practice earlier this week, and they are every position's up for grabs almost. There's a lot of different kids fighting for different positions across both the offense and the defense. So, competition, and hopefully the younger kids who had some success at the JV level or as reserves last year saw what this group did and can kind of carry that over.
You can hear that all the way going down to the middle school level, too. There's going to be a lot of talent coming through the pipeline here in Beaver Dam the next few years. This is a fun opportunity for Beaver Dam to kind of figure out early in the season who's going to step up and take some of these roles.
Yeah. Also, by the way, people may not have heard yet, Wally's going to join Coach Ladron and me in the broadcast booth for Beaver Dam football this year.
Oh, let's go. Well, I was just saying, official work.
Well, yeah, it's official. It's officially official, Wally.
Breaking news. Okay, well, I'm very excited. I love covering Golden Beavers, any kind of sport. Be in the booth with 2 legends in themselves. I'm very pumped.
And you know what we had to do, though? I had to do press box checks, Wally, because me and you and Coach Ladron
big bodies.
We're all big guys. And then you throw in.
You had to do the square footage?
And then you throw in whoever's doing camera. If Ninja would ever do camera for us, too, if you put all 4 of us, they may
the car's going to be driving like this on the way over there.
Press box might lean. But no, so the way we're set up, Wally, you'll get a chance to join us in the broadcast booth for football. That'll be fun.
Well, I'm fired up for that, too. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm going to try not to blunder it too bad.
Sure. So that'll be a fun one on the road at Menominee Falls. And then September 5th, that's when we start getting into actual doubleheader Friday nights the rest of the year.
Absolutely. And that's going to be a lot of fun. September 5th, the first of those games. They're going to be going on at the same time. But Mount Horeb Barneveld at Beaver Dam. That was a remarkable game last year. It was Beaver Dam's lone regular season loss. And then Randolph at Lourdes, and that's going to be at Titan Stadium.
The Randolph and Lourdes at Titan Stadium, that is correct. Lourdes Academy is one of those teams that they've had a solid quarterback play for like the last 8 years. And now, they graduated, obviously a great player, Wally, last year, and they're going to look for answers at the QB. Randolph's one of those teams where, Coach Chase, one of the best coaches across the area, Hall of Famer, he's always going to have Randolph ready. And these are 2 teams that hope to challenge at the top of the Trailways when it's all said and done.
Well, and it's interesting just seeing the contrast of styles, too. Randolph does not like to throw the ball around. They're very old school, physical. Ben Paul, we remember him in the basketball season.
Yep.
He's just a physical guy, loves that contact. And he leads that team in rushing, too. So we're excited to see how they do. And I'll flip to your point, losing a 2,200-yard passer and Wade Lindahl is going to be a big loss.
Great name.
I figured you'd like Wade.
Lindahl's awesome.
But looking at that Beaver Dam matchup,
That's
said
going to be
it.
big. That's going to be big.
That's the only loss Beaver Dam had in a regular season was at Mount Horeb Barneveld, and there was a game that I think a lot of people came away thinking we could have won that game.
That was a grinder last year down there. You know, you went down to that place, and I believe they had a bunch of drives or a few drives that went into the red zone, and they came away with nothing. And it was just one of those where you felt the hitting in the press box. You know, you have games like that. You feel the hitting in the press box.
Yeah, you can hear the pads popping.
You know, Mount Horeb Barneveld, again, they went on their way to, have a level 3 playoff run and an 11-1 record as well. So they were, they're a solid squad, and they've got a great program down there. And that's just a great, that's another great matchup for Beaver Dam to get going and kind of test themselves.
Cut your teeth a little bit.
They were relatively close to getting to state. Like you said, Wade, they made a decent playoff run, ended up losing to Catholic Memorial. Brooks Kendrickson was their quarterback last year. This will be his senior year. He had 26 passing touchdowns. All right, that is week 3, and kind of like you said, Wade, the official start of the double headers, 2 games, 1 day, each Friday going forward. Same theme continues into week 4. Beaver Dam at Sauk Prairie, going on the road for that one. And then Randolph again, this time visiting Cambria-Friesland, the Hilltoppers.
Yeah, that's Friday, September 12th. Again, Mike Tronson, Tim Haldeman are going to have the call on those Friday night doubleheader games. But Randolph, Cambria-Friesland, the last matchup, these two teams will become a co-op next year.
Oh, wow.
They're going to become the RCF Patriots.
There we go.
And because there's only like 4 miles away from these, 4 or 5 miles separate Cambria-Friesland and Randolph. And Cambria-Friesland has been, their school, they've had runs under Coach Bilesma, now Coach Link, where they have had like over 50% of the kids in the school out, and going out for football. And they've always found ways to be competitive and win. They're just hard-nosed kids. Randolph's the same way. And I know Cambria talked about, flirted with 8-man football a little bit over the years. And they're going to combine with Randolph in the 2026 season. And so this is the last hurrah between these two teams.
Wow. Well, and I was going to say, you're going to have bragging rights between future teammates forever.
In the same locker room going forward.
In the same locker room.
And it's homecoming.
Oh wow, even better. They'll be sharing the homecoming the next year.
And that's on Daily Dodge TV. But I like the name, the RCF Patriots.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. I want to know what colors they end up going with.
I bet you red, white, and blue.
Oh my gosh.
Legion
Wade Bates.
vibes. Yeah.
That's a smart move. Red, white, and blue, colorful, like maybe a Patriot with like a rocket behind it. I don't know.
And they do co-op in some other sports as well. So so it makes sense, though, because like I said, they're so close together and you can get things together. And it's going to be fun watching this matchup. It's one of those true rivalry games that you have, across the region every year, it's so close. There's the highway between, it's literally car to bumper all the way back, whichever, team is on the road.
Rivalries become brothers.
That's going to be super cool. Cambria-Friesland, I'm excited to see the offense, too. They shot out of a cannon last year. They scored 30 or more points. They had some 40, 50, 60-point games in there in 5 of the first 6 games. Beaver Dam at Sauk Prairie, this was at home last year, and I remember being on camera for that with you and Tim Ladron, Wade. That was the Eli Bryan and Jeff Froyen show. It was aerial assault. We understand this offense, personnel-wise, is going to look a little different this year. I'm curious to see how they attack the Sauk Prairie defense 4 weeks in.
You know what's funny? You mentioned FedEx had a huge game. I don't know if you remember that game. FedEx had like 138 receiving, but Josiah Barnes that day had 144 and 4.
Everybody got there.
I know,
yeah.
and that's just one of those things where Brock Lindy's squad had it going, and that's going to be on the road over at Sauk. And again, it's one of those games as Beaver Dam is going to use these. With the way the East Central is set up, they have Coach Lindy and his staff have a big catalog of games to work on things and find out who is going to earn spots to put them in the best position to have success.
I'm excited for that one. That'll be a good one on the road once again. And going into week 5, it'll be Beaver Dam at Kettle Moraine Lutheran, another simulcast on Daily Dodge TV and 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam. And then we get to go to HorrorCon for the first time this football season. Manitowoc Lutheran takes on Houston on Daily Dodge TV.
It's Friday, September 19th. You mentioned, let's start with the Houston Manitowoc Lutheran. That was a pretty competitive game last year. Houston ended up winning 21-0. Manitowoc Lutheran ended up as a level 2 team. And, talking to Coach Meyer a little bit, and he thinks, these are going to be some, this is going to be a good test for his squad. And Wally, we love the facility over in HorrorCon.
Oh my gosh. I think that was the first thing Cory and I noticed when we got over there this year. We're like, this place is a college-like environment.
100%.
And they do just all the bells and whistles over there. I mean, it's going to be a treat. I'm excited that we're going to have, I don't want to spoil anything, but we're going to be over there at least once.
Yeah, at least one time.
Yeah.
We'll wait and see
At
what
least
happens.
one time.
As you listen to the schedule release show on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam and Daily Dodge TV, the 2025 football broadcast schedule release show here. He's Cory Sparks with Wally Lukachinsky. I am Wade Bates, and you mentioned Beaver Dam opening the final year in the East Central Conference on the road at Kettle Moraine Lutheran. And last year it was 41-27, but that was a closer game than what that score may have looked.
That was a game that was a one possession,
Yes.
a touchdown game with like 3 minutes left.
They
And
stuck around.
You look at the standings, you look at the schedules. It's a game that you probably wouldn't have expected that way, but that's why styles make fights. And KML came to play last year. I remember listening to you guys in the booth to be like, oh my gosh, it's a good thing the offense was scoring as much as they were, because KML ended up finding a little bit of momentum in the end, and they were really hard to get off the football field.
It was, and it's one of those things where you get a team like that where you looked at Beaver Dam as the heavy favorite. You're right, you let a team hang around, and then you kind of start sweating and looking around and looking at the clock. And but they made plays, and that was one of the backbones of Beaver Dam last year, was they found ways to get it done and found ways to make plays. And it'll be a good test for Brock Lindy's squad in the ECC opener.
There we go. And as you said, Wade, the last season that they will be in the East Central Conference. Let's go to week 6. It's the last week of football in September, and it's a rivalry as old as time. Watertown at Beaver Dam. Poinet at Marquezan on September 26th. Beaver Dam game again on Daily Dodge TV and 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam. Poinet at the Marquezan Hornets on Daily Dodge TV.
It's Friday, September 26th. Again, a couple of good ones. Marquezan is going to be interesting. Talked to Coach Dunleavy here earlier. And remember, they kind of struggled a little bit last year, but they have all 11 starters back.
Wow.
On both sides of the ball. Last year, Poinet won that game 21-0. Should be a better game this year. Poinet is a team that was a playoff team last year, hopes to be in the upper half of that Eastern Suburban. Marquezan wants to be up there as well, and that's going to be a great matchup for Coach Dunleavy and his squad.
Hardest thing with Marquezan at the end of the year, they ended up at one point, they were 3-2 in the season, but they only scored 13 total points in their last 4 matchups. So having that experience coming back, you expect more guys are going to be able to step up in those moments, make big plays, and the defense was fine. So if they're able to put some points on the board, you're right. Look out for this Marquezan team to take a big step forward.
100%. Treston Eckstein was their leading rusher with over 600 rushing yards out of the backfield. Their quarterback as well. And as Wade said, all 11 starters coming back. That's exciting. I'm excited for Watertown at Beaver Dam. Again, I was on camera with you and Tim Ladrin last year. That is the most hostile fan environment I have ever been in person
Well,
for.
these games have gotten physical over the last, you saw 37-7 last year. Beaver Dam won at Watertown's home field. Josiah Barnes had another 200-yard day. Beaver Dam had 20 points in the second quarter. That kind of busted that one open. But there's just been these have been real physical games, maybe the last 3 or 4 matchups, and it's kind of carried over. It carried over even to our video stream chat last year.
It
Oh
did.
yeah,
Do you remember that?
Weeks after that game.
Yes. And so it's always fun, Watertown, and it's kind of great that these two teams have kind of followed each other, after having to separate for a little bit in the conference when it comes to when they switched to the Badger and such after being the longtime Little Ten rivals, that they kind of were back in the ECC together here for a conference. And you always have to ask this week, Coach Tim Ladrin, because he's doing the call with us, which team are you rooting for, Coach?
Yeah.
Point. Alum.
He's a Watertown alum. They even had him up on the big. Remember, they had him on the jumbotron
For the Ladrin Bowl. That's right.
They had him on the jumbotron last year at Watertown's football field, and they thanked the alum for coming back and wished him good luck tonight and the night of the game. And I don't know who he's rooting for.
I was going to say, I know his school wants to send him home a little upset. And last year, to your point, that rivalry games too, you always get a little bit more competitiveness with the scoreboard. I think early in games, Watertown scored on their opening drive to go up 7-0.
Yeah.
And the defense was lights out for the Golden Beavers after that. It was 10-7 at halftime.
Yeah.
It was a tough first half.
Coach Krogan's doing a nice job there as he took over Watertown from the legendary Coach Benji Camrath, who's out now. Benji Camrath now, if you didn't know, runs a quarterbacking school. So if Benji played one of the greatest high school quarterbacks that I've ever seen play, and him and his son Reese were my first father-son duo that I've called games
right.
on the radio for. I called Benji when he was a Mayville stud and went on to Minnesota. But he's running a quarterback school. Maybe sometime during the year we get him on to talk about it. But he doing that now. Coach Krogan took over and just kind of trying to restoring the roar here for the Goslings. I'm sure that they'll do a great job there. But rivalry game, we'll look forward to that at Durleith Field on September 26th.
Yeah, they're going to travel well. I know Beaver Dam traveled well to Watertown, so it's only right the Goslings return the favor. On to week 7, October 3rd, Beaver Dam at Kewaskum, back on the road, conference play and Columbus at Lake Mills. I brought up the term heavyweight matchup before. That definitely applies here on October 3rd.
We saw Beaver Dam last year against Keewauskum jump up 35-0 in the first half, kind of just coasted the rest of the way. So this will be a little bit different again. You're talking about all that experience leaving for the Golden Beavers. Keewauskum bringing a lot of guys back. We expect this to be a much more competitive matchup. But then Cory, I love that you set it up the way you did. That Lake Mills Columbus matchup, that is too high
it's the Blue
power.
Bloods. Yep.
Those are going to be big punches, Wade. And I know that we're going to be fired up to cover what we imagine to be a slugfest.
That's exactly, Columbus here, Coach Ryan's squad, Roach and 2,200 yards, 35 touchdowns is, he's graduated. I think they're going to lean on, Peyton Powers and then find somebody else to carry the rock. They had like 400 or 500 yard rushers last year, but Peyton Powers kind of a dual threat kind of guy at quarterback. And I've been texting Coach Ryan and, we'll dive into Columbus as we get a little closer. But, Lake Mills is Lake Mills and it's Lake Mills' homecoming as well, guys.
Oh, my goodness. So that's going to be an awesome atmosphere. And I like that you brought up the past running backs. I had to look it up. I remembered the last name. Colton Brunell from 2 years ago was remarkable. And then this last year, Roach. So you're expecting maybe a little more on Powers, whether that be out of the backfield or throwing it a little bit more on offense.
No, exactly. Well, I think if you're Columbus, they're going to run. They're going to hammer.
It's just a matter of who's running.
They're going to hammer the rock. Yeah. But I'm just saying, Peyton's got an arm, and they can take care of business there as well. And it'll just be fun to watch those two teams. And you get that's in week 7.
7. Yep.
So that'll be a great matchup there. And you mentioned Beaver Dam and Keewauskum. Beaver Dam will probably be the favorite, but we don't know because the Beaver Dam's got things to work on this year and get her going. And Wally, just so you know, it's one of the stadiums in October. We're going to be on the roof there. So
I'll be bundled up. I'll be ready to roll.
It's not. I did a game at Keewauskum once. It was like a level 3 playoff game, an ultra-site game, and we were on the roof, and it was like 20 degrees, the wind chill of like 0.
Sounds
You're
like fun.
Braver man than me.
Yeah, and the thing was, though, they were going to try to squeeze us in the press box, and I said to my broadcast partner, I'm like, we're going to be too close to the other 2 stations there. We're just going to go on the roof and be by ourselves.
Last thing before we move on to week 8, huge shout out to the big uglies up front for Columbus. Those are the guys that make that machine keep running.
Yes.
Always have a great offensive line. You got to give a little support for the big fellas up front. So I love you guys, and again, you got to good luck to them going forward.
Clear the sidewalk. And now we're at the part of the season where if playoff bids haven't been clinched, we're getting very close to that point. We move on to week 8 of the 2025 football season. Port Washington at Beaver Dam. This time the Golden Beavers host what was a very consequential matchup last year, likely going to be that this year. Clinton at Houston. It's a doubleheader on October 10th.
Yeah, you look at that Port Washington game. You went to Port Washington last year. That's the game where Coach Ladman and I broadcast from the edge of a cliff. But no, we literally did.
I know. It's so funny to hear you say that.
That was very well
delivered.
delivered.
Aiden Voigt was afraid that he was going to fall over. We got it done. But the way the schedule maker works out, it's great how they schedule this. Because Beaver Dam, Plymouth, Port Washington, probably the 3 teams in the East Central this year that are considered the favorites. And Beaver Dam went to their place and they punched them in the mouth and got a shutout victory, like 23-0.
And got to celebrate on their field.
Yeah, and so I'm sure that Port Washington wants to. They remember that. That's Beaver Dam's homecoming as well. And by the way, we have 5 homecoming games on the schedule this year.
That's awesome.
So homecoming tour. That means hopefully, if you have any free food for the guys in the booth, Mike and Tim won't turn it down. And obviously Beaver Dam's homecoming. I think we have free reign to the press box. Coach Lindy's dad, Hondu, will have all the hot dogs you want, Wally.
Well, I'm excited for that. I'm also excited. Houston last year beat this Clinton team 41-20, and Barrett Meyer. They love to throw the ball around over there. But this was one of those games where it was actually a little different. They actually ran the ball all over Clinton, had over 240 yards to show for it. So it'll be interesting to see if you continue that maybe running renaissance that you're seeing from Houston, or if it's going to be more pass heavy once again.
Yeah, Clinton's one of those teams that are trying to find their footing here. I know I think I was told that they have some numbers issues, when it comes to numbers in the league. But getting Horicon and Houston Ford, that squad, is a team too. They're one of those interesting teams in that league. Middle of the pack team. If they get a few wins here and there, and come these 50-50 games, they could find themselves, right towards the top. And we'll wait and see. Coach Meyer's doing a great job over there, and look excited to see him twice this year at over in Horicon.
We'll kind of get the earlier look in the season, and then by the time week 8 rolls around, you know who you are. Quick note on Houston in terms of the run-pass ratio we could be seeing this year. They lost their top 5 receivers to graduation, so maybe expected more of a ground game, but who knows? Guys could be emerging in camp right now. And that brings us to week 9, some postseason bids, some conference championship bids. Beaver Dam, that's a very familiar sight for them if you're referencing last year. They did it for the first time since 1983 against Port Washington, but this time, the last game of the year is at home against Plymouth. One of those three teams, you said, Wade, that could be vying for that conference title. We could see some shockers out there, but Plymouth, Beaver Dam, Port Washington, those teams you have your eyes on. And then if you're watching on Daily Dodge TV, we have a couple of question mark helmets. That's because that is a flex game. We're going to decide what goes there depending on essentially who ends up being the most competitive game now.
And we have like the Gotham Riddlers or something like that.
Could
They're
also
playing
be
each other. Corey has no idea what I'm talking about, I bet you.
The question mark against the question mark. No, I don't.
The Riddlers are an old Batman reference. Wally.
I did know that. Guys, when he comes out with ask you terrible riddles, has question marks all over it. Yeah.
So that's there. There's a couple things that, Johnson Crick at Randolph, I mean, that's one that might be a game on the docket there for the Trailways. We'll see what happens. The Houston squad, they go to Lodi that last week as well. So just a couple of games on there. You look at it because Lodi's a team, they got some turnover there with coaching staffs and things like that, and so, but they're always a traditional power. So they're on the docket as well, and we'll kind of look and try to find a matchup that is competitive, and maybe if there's something on the line, whether it's how they weight in Sunday Night Football. Maybe there's two teams that are maybe middle of the league looking for a playoff bid.
Yes.
Or maybe a team's playing for a conference championship. But the 2025 high school football schedule on Daily Dodge TV and 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam again should be a fun time, and it's going to be fun. Can you believe we're about scrimmages are next week, and then 2 weeks from tonight?
That's crazy.
You guys will be in the opener over at Marshall,
and we get deja vu. That was the first game of our fall prep sports season last year. Was Marshall at Johnson Crick? This time it's hosted by Klein Heinz's squad. But I'm super excited. 18 games, number 18's up in the air, and that's the fun part of this is you kind of just get to see how the cards fall.
And we will post those things at dailydodge.com. We'll post the schedule on the sports tab as we always do. And it should be a fun year. And who knows who's going to make a deep run here. You never know. Some teams you think you might know are going to make a run, Wally. Some teams can maybe come out of nowhere. And I remember Horicon Houston's Ford, not this year, but last year. 2 years ago, came kind of out of nowhere and
went crazy
and tied for a league title.
Well, then you even have it throughout the end of the year, too, where you see some teams like Marshall get their sea legs and then go on a little bit of a run. You brought up Bellevue, an 8 seed. So it's like the football season's long. These teams evolve over time, and being able to watch them as the year goes on. Guys, I got a fever. The only fever is more football.
Again, every Beaver Dam game on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam and Daily Dodge TV. The Dam Sports Show on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam 4 until 5 every weekday. You guys will not only have the high school football season blanketed, but you'll have all of high school sports blanketed every single day, every single week, every single month. All year long.
Treat us as your pregame show. The third block of the show, and sometimes more than that, is usually our preps block. If there's a game we're covering, you can bet we're talking about it.
100%. And we love to talk about it, too. So this year, we're going to lean even harder into this coverage. We're going to have a lot of fun, great ideas coming up, and very excited to get out there with you fellas.
All right, this has been the high school football broadcast release show on 1430 ESPN Beaver Dam and Daily Dodge TV.